Israel is using sabotage, cyberwarfare, assassination, and secret diplomacy to stop a nuclear Iran and create a new Middle East. And we're going to talk more about that in the book Target Tehran with our guest Ilan Evyatar. Welcome to St. Louis in Tune, and thank you for joining us for fresh perspectives on issues and events with experts, community leaders, and everyday people who are making a difference in shaping our society and world. I'm your host, Arnold Stricker, along with co-host Mark Langston. Mark, it's going to be an interesting show today.
I know. In fact, we are connecting with our guest in Israel, right?
Yes, we will be getting him on the line here in a few short moments. But it is 8 hours ahead. He's in the evening time right now, and I really appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule to get with us. First, our return to civility. If you get put on hold, like our guest is, during a phone conversation, stay by the phone while you're waiting. Don't wander away and leave the person on the other end thinking that you hung up on them. Besides, you might never learn the answer to what you called about.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And we really want to know what's going on. The book we're going to be talking about is called Target Tehran, How Israel is Using Sabotage, Cyberwarfare, Assassination, and Secret Diplomacy to Stop a Nuclear Iran and Create a New Middle East. And our guest is going to be at the New Jewish Book Festival, and he's going to be doing an online event, and that's going to take place Tuesday, November 12th. And it's starting at 1 o'clock p.m. It goes to 2:15. It's an online event, so you have to sign up for that. Go to the St. Louis Jewish Community Center or the Jewish Book Festival website. We'll have more about that on the podcast page, direct links for you. But our guest, Ilan Evyatar, is a former editor-in-chief of the award-winning magazine The Jerusalem Report. He's also a former news director, columnist, and senior contributor at the Jerusalem Post. He's edited and translated several books, worked as a speechwriter and ghostwriter. He was born in Israel and raised in London. Something about this book, he talks about how Mossad has employed all of these things to attempt to thwart Iran's nuclear weapons program and how the agency played a role in leveraging mutual fear of Iran to forge alliances with Gulf Arab states. He talks about the nuclear agreement in 2015. He draws on exclusive interviews with top intelligence sources from Israel and the United States, including the Mossad and the CIA. And it's really, folks, an intricate web of international diplomacy and security, and he provides some really essential context for things that are going on currently in Lebanon with Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza. So here's Ilan. We're talking to Ilan Evyatar. He's an author and journalist, and we're talking to him about the book Target Tehran, How Israel is Using Sabotage, Cyber Warfare, Assassination, and Secret Diplomacy to Stop a Nuclear Iran and Create a New Middle East. I'm grateful for the time that we can spend together today. You're going to be at the Jewish Book Festival coming up, and we'll talk more about that. Ilan, what was prompting you to write this book with Yonah Jeremy Bob?
Great to be with you, and thank you for that question. The idea for the book basically came when Israel, in what was really quite an unprecedented step, announced publicly at a press conference, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in 2018 revealed the heist of Iran's nuclear archive. Now, this is something that's very unusual in the intelligence world. Usually you would show that to a few select allies. You would give them some access to some of the information, but Israel used this as a very prominent public act of diplomacy, as it were, in its bid to get the Trump administration to pull out of the 2015 JCPOA nuclear accord. So Israel made this public release of information. He showed the files that had been seized in this daring heist in Iran, and the further details were leaked. So that gave us a lot of information to work with to begin the book. So the first chapter of the book is devoted to this heist. And what's unusual about the book is that we have this, it's very up to date. It came out in September 2023, and it basically goes right up there to April of that year.
And
normally, books about intelligence can be 20, 30, 40, 50 years old.
yeah, I was really amazed at the detail and the specific situations that are described in the book. You had, it seemed, unprecedented access to a variety of intelligence officers and those individuals within governments to discuss this information. How did you get that access like that?
Both myself and you and I have reported for so many years on these issues. So between the two of us, we had contacts with intelligence officials over a period of close to 30 years. So between the two of us, we were basically able to reach out to our contact and provide the whole arc, the story of Israel's campaign against Iran's nuclear program, beginning from the mid-1990s all the way through to 2020, 2022, 23.
It really is a historical analysis of the Israeli push to keep the Iran nuclear program in check. And did it surprise you, even though it was a political and a push with the Trump administration, did it surprise you that the Mossad revealed that information and that Israel revealed that information internationally?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like I said, it's highly unusual to release intelligence information in that way. But Israeli intelligence officials, among them Yossi Cohen, the former head of Mossad, said that it's more important what the use you make of the intelligence and the intelligence himself, and he's equipped, as far as I'm concerned, you can put it in the main plaza in Paris, in the Arc de Triomphe. So for them, it was far more important to get across the message that Iran is lying about its nuclear program. And they also wanted to, Yossi Cohen, the head of the Mossad, and Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, wanted the U.S. out of the 2015 nuclear accords, which they saw as a bad agreement that would eventually allow Iran to become a nuclear state or a threshold nuclear state.
How much, speaking about that, how much does Israel rely on the relationships and influence that they have with the Arab states through the Abraham Accords and the EU and the United States in decisions that they are making currently? How much influence is played in that?
Well, as well as looking at Mossad's efforts to thwart the nuclear program or to slow it down, at the very least, the book also looks at Mossad's involvement in the behind-the-scenes secret diplomacy that led to the Abraham Accords with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, and also ties with Saudi Arabia, which have yet to come to full normalization, but exist pretty openly, one could say. For example, we saw in the Iranian attacks against Israel, the Iranian ballistic missile attacks against Israel in April of this year and in October of this year, how Israel cooperated with the intelligence agencies of other countries, how they received intelligence, how they received radar data, things that would have been completely unimaginable a few years ago.
Do you see a normalization with many more Arab states in light of what I would call Hamas's defeat and what's going on in Lebanon with Hezbollah? Do you see more of a normalization of Israel with the rest of the Arab communities and countries and vice versa, even in light of what Iran's doing?
Yeah, when we look back to October 7th, I think it's very clear now, and has been for some time, that one of the aims of the Hamas attack, the Hamas massacres, was to derail what looked like imminent normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. In the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, had basically said this is going to happen any day. So it was really a question of when and not if. And the rhetoric has changed a lot since that had happened. Saudi Arabia has been much more circumspect about its ties with Israel. It's even been quite caustic in its rhetoric. But behind the scenes, ties are still ongoing. And yes, I think eventually we will see a reduction of that normalization process, especially now that Hamas has really been almost completely dismantled. But I think that first of all, there'll have to be some kind of a hostage deal. There'll have to be conditions that allow this to be in place, and there'll have to be some kind of commitment from Israel at least to placate Saudi public opinion by presenting some kind of path towards Palestinian statehood. Now, that is also debatable what that will mean.
Now, as we've heard the news here in the States, with what's gone on in the Gaza Strip with Hamas and in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah, the Arab countries, as I've read in the book, it seemed like they were, we understand we have to protect our Arab brothers and watch out for them, but we really would like to have a normalization with Israel. With these recent developments, and you mentioned about what's going on with Saudi Arabia there, how has now Hezbollah's influence and that kind of flare-up in the north, has that distracted even further from Saudi Arabia and other Arab states to keep tight with their normalization?
The Saudis and the other moderate city states, on the one hand, they have a commitment to the Palestinian cause, to the Palestinian people, to Palestinian statehood. The Saudis are the guardians of the two mosques, so they have a special role within the Islamic world. But when it comes to Hezbollah is a Shiite proxy of Iran, and there's no love lost between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and also with Hezbollah. The Saudis don't like Hezbollah. They have pushed out their influence in Lebanon, so I think the Saudis would very much to see Hezbollah dismantled even further, and perhaps some kind of arrangement whereby Hezbollah gives up some of its strategic weaponry or gives up some of its control over the Lebanese state.
This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston of St. Louis Entomb. We're talking to Ilan Evyatar, author and journalist of the book Target Tehran, and he is going to be doing an online event at the Jewish Book Festival, and that is Tuesday, November the 12th, and it will be at 1 o'clock p.m. It will end at 2:15 p.m. We will give more information about that on the podcast page. But Ilan, as I read the book, it's a great overview in detail of things that I really never knew, and maybe we never knew because these things aren't given out by intelligence communities. I'm sure there's probably a whole lot of stories from the Central Intelligence Agency that we would be aghast at, or seriously, wow, that's surprising. But you revealed in the book, and as time has gone on, and now things that are developing with many of the Hamas leaders being just going away, I'll put it that way, and disappearing and coming off the scene, it seems like Mossad is continuing methodically to make sure that their focus is keeping Iran from that getting that nuclear weapon and eliminating these proxy wars that are going on. Is that kind of the real feel for this latest insurgents that they've gone on and really taken out the Hamas leaders?
I think at the moment they really have their work cut out, because like you say, on the one hand, they're very busy with the fight against Hezbollah, with not just with Hezbollah. Don't forget Israel has been under attack from Iranian proxy militias, both in Syria and Iraq, from the Houthis in Yemen and Hamas. Israel is basically fighting on 7 fronts. So you also include Iran, which has attacked Israel twice, and then the West Bank as well. And at the same time, Mossad has to be busy, keep itself busy with making sure that Iran, under the cover of the fog of war, doesn't make any kind of nuclear breakthrough. And of course, we also have the question of what is Israel going to do in response to the latest Iranian ballistic missile attack against Israel, in which it fired 180 or so ballistic missiles at Israel, causing quite severe damage in various places, although without being too major. But Israel's going to respond. And the question is, will Israel respond directly against Iran's nuclear program? Will it limit its response to military sites, perhaps connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the Praetorian Guard of the Iranian leadership? or will it target economic interest? I think pretty much the big question at the moment. But that happened around 3 weeks ago. The question is when also will Israel respond. The Jewish holidays end in a few days, but then you also have the American elections coming up in, less than 3 weeks. So
Yes.
Will Israel wait until the elections? Will they launch an attack after the elections? A lot of questions on that front.
And there's other activities, as you well know, the attack on the President Netanyahu's house, and also the release of Israeli plans to attack Iran, and whether that came from American sources or where that came from. And those all play into that. From your perspective, does that make Israel step back a little bit and wait for some of the dust to settle before they figure out what they're going to do? Or what do you think is going to happen there?
I think the big question in terms of the United States is, will Israel attack before the elections, which could be seen as a move that tries to influence the elections in some way. In terms of the leak, intelligence officials say, well, it's the leak in itself is very grave. There's nothing really operational there that can give the Iranians any kind of advantage.
I was in one of the chapters, you talked about the importance of how cyber warfare has really, I don't want to say overtaken real warfare with guns and ammunition and bombs and missiles and things like that, but it seems to be really becoming a more prominent and, my words, a destructive kind of thing, because it can really cripple an economy and cripple a country very quickly. Do you foresee that is probably a venue that Israel will take to cripple the Iranian economy, doing that more in a cyber way than a direct attack militarily?
It's definitely a possibility. Israel has shown in the past with various attacks that have been attributed to it. For example, the 2010 Stuxnet operation, which crippled the Iranian centrifuges at nuclear plants. We considered one of the first cyber attacks that moved over, as it were, into the physical world, and was believed to be a joint operation with the US and other countries. And it also launched a major attack a few years ago against the Bandar Abbas port, which basically, again, according to the foreign sources, would never took direct responsibility, but that attack basically crippled one of Iran's major ports for a few days, and that came after an Iranian cyber attack on Israeli water sources, which was aimed at releasing large amounts of chlorine into the water supply, which can be quite deadly, even though it didn't actually reach that stage. So cyber is definitely an option. Israel's defense minister has said that Israel's response will be precise and surprising. So that very much could be one of those surprises. And there are other options that Israel could take there.
What is the attitude of the Israeli people at this point right now? You're over in Israel right now, and what do all the people think about things that are going on in the Gaza Strip with Hamas, what's going on with Hezbollah up north, and with the Iranian threat through proxies? What is the status of the people and their thoughts towards all of this activity?
Obviously, Israel is a democracy with diverse opinions, but I would say if there's any kind of a difference of opinion in Israel about what's going on at the moment, it's mainly aimed at the southern front in Gaza, whether Israel should, what it should be prepared to do now, especially after Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed last week. So what should it be prepared to do in order to achieve a hostage release? And some people say now is the time for Israel to agree to pull out of its forces from Gaza. Well, others should say Israel has to push ahead. It has to continue to dismantle Hamas. At least Hamas must, at the very least, be expelled from the Gaza Strip, and measures be put in place where you're not allowed to have any kind of military presence in the Gaza Strip. When it comes to Lebanon, I think that at the moment there's much less this broad support for the campaign in the north, but you get tens of thousands of people were displaced from their homes. They've been displaced for over a year. Hezbollah, in that time, fired thousands and thousands of rockets at Israeli communities. This campaign generally has broad popular support, even though it has now put to a greater number of people under the rage of Hezbollah's rocket fire. But the current campaign aims to push Hezbollah back from controlling ground, from the line of sight from which it can fire anti-tank missiles against Israeli communities. The question is, what kind of support will it enjoy if Israel decides to deepen its ground operations, perhaps up to the Litani River or even further north, to push Hezbollah out of those areas, which will be a far longer and more complex operation.
You know, the politics and the involvement of other countries in the Middle East and in Israeli affairs, this whole thing looks like a 3D chess game where you just can't make a move and expect somebody else to make a move back when you have so many individual countries involved, and Israel's not making its own autonomous decisions because they want to consult the United States. They want to make sure they're not upsetting other Arab countries that they're trying to establish normalization with. What was the surprise in you putting the book together that was like, wow, I didn't know that, and it makes sense now, or it totally took you by surprise and you're still wondering what was going on?
I'm actually already surprised because this has been going on for such a long time. Iran has been building its proxy army, its ring of fire around Israel for a long time, for decades. And what's interesting is that basically almost all of the people who conceived this ring of fire and were part of it are now gone from the scene. Nasrallah assassinated Hezbollah was a major player in there. So was Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC general assassinated by the United States in 2020. He was basically the driving force behind this ring of fire. And now Yahya Sinwar of Hamas, who had very close ties with Iran, is also gone. We're going to see changes, obviously. Iran's proxy army is very severely hit. It doesn't really have the capability anymore to do what it wanted to do on October 7. And don't forget Hezbollah, where we've seen this through all the tunnels and ammunition dumps that have been uncovered just tens of meters from Israel's border. Hezbollah was basically planning the same kind of operation to conquer Israeli territory and perhaps like Hamas to commit these horrific acts. You mentioned the 3D chess game. That's very true. Iranians are, an American official, intelligence official told me they're a nation of chess players and rug weavers. They're very sophisticated. They're very patient. What happens now, we'll have to see, of course.
What are you working on now individually that we may see hit the bookshelves or read in the press sometime? You're working on anything specifically?
Yeah, actually, I'm basically working on a new book, very much in its early stages, on how Iran built its ring of fire on its project to destroy Israel. That is the ultimate aim of the regime, I would say, of the Islamic Republic, not Iran, because a lot of Israel and Iran have had very friendly relations in the past, but now since the revolution of 1979, since Ayatollah Khamenei came to power, and after him the present Ayatollah Khamenei, they're both very ideologically motivated, anti-Semitic. They want to achieve regional running, and they want to see the state of Israel basically crumble and disappear.
I want to encourage the listeners to get your book, Target Tehran. Ilan Evyatar is our guest today. He's an author and journalist. It's how Israel is using sabotage, cyber warfare, assassination, and secret diplomacy to stop a nuclear Iran and create a new Middle East. He wrote that with Johann Jeremy Bob. And Ilan is going to be at the Jewish Book Festival on November the 12th. He's going to be doing an online event starting at 1 o'clock. And you can get more information at the St. Louis Jewish Community Center. Ilan, thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate the efforts that we put into trying to get you online. And it's been a pleasure to read your book, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Mark, that book is just incredible.
I'm a bit speechless at some of the things he says and what's in the book.
It's
when you think you have an idea of what's going on over there.
We have no idea.
You're right.
We have no idea. When they talked about the nuclear agreement, and it's something that was going on, Iran wanted this. Maybe I shouldn't say Iran wanted it, but it happened during the Obama administration, and then during the Trump administration, they cut that off. And a lot of it was due to the Israeli information and documentation that they provide. And just to make it short for listeners, is the Mossad went into Tehran, to the place where all of these documents were being stored, broke in and stole them, and took them back to Israel and translated them, put together a presentation that President Netanyahu made, which you can go on YouTube and look at, and where he presented to the international community how Iran lied and how they have lied for 20-something years about all of this, about their nuclear program, and about, we don't want this to be a military kind of thing. We're not building a bomb. We're doing this for our country and generating electricity, blah, blah, blah. But it's really... It's a fascinating read about international affairs and espionage. And I guess I was really surprised at the frankness of some of the activities and how the leaders actually opened up and let people know what was going on. Because the Mossad's pretty close cards. They don't say, hey, we've done this. They don't go, yeah, we did that. They don't say anything. And which to me makes a lot of sense, and it makes you wonder. But even recently, about what we've heard about the pagers blowing up, or the phones blowing up, or the walkie-talkies blowing up, and then different things like that, of how they are using technology. And that's why I was asking him about the technological warfare with the cyber warfare, which seems to be a huge deal. Even more militarily, you can blow stuff up at any time. But when you can do what they did to the gas situation, the gasoline, apparently on a certain day you can go get gas for half the price. And the gasoline in Iran is apparently subsidized by the government. And on a certain day you can go and get it even at a half price. Everybody was going that day, and there was a cyber attack on their gasoline situation, and you couldn't get gas. And so that really crippled them and created a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of consternation going on in Iran right now anyway. It's not like everybody's, yeah, we love this place.
Right.
There's a minority group there we're sick of living under these economic conditions. We're sick of living under kind of the rule that you have right now. And if you go back to when we were in high school and when the Shah was in power, and Iran was a very Western, Eastern kind of culture, a very proud culture. They have a huge history. The Persian culture has a huge history. And now it's an Islamic state, and with Sharia law, and it's a tough situation for a lot of people.
You hope that eventually the people that want a better life will stand up and be heard, and you'll start to see the changes. It's taking a long time for any of the changes, I think, to happen in that part of the world. And I think we talked about it off microphone about Jordan and how sick of it those people are.
Yes.
And why don't they stand up and fight against it?
And he describes that in here, that off the books, they're having all these talks. They want to have normalization with Israel. They see Israel as a major player because they don't like Iran either. But they don't want to come out and say, yeah, we're going to normalize relationships with Israel, because it's like, who wants to be the first? That's why the Abraham Accords was very significant and important. And Saudi Arabia, they've still not come out publicly, and a lot of it involves the United States, a lot of it involves now the EU, and what are we going to give, what's Israel going to give, and we're not talking about we're talking about money, we're talking about military support, we're talking about trade, we're talking about business dealings, all that kind of stuff, and if I give you this support, what am I getting in return? Right. And it's just a fascinating read that, not that I didn't know things like that were going on, but I didn't know the extent. He talks about in there about somebody coming to speaking with President George W. Bush, and they were having a conversation, said, we're going to do this, and President Bush was like, no. And the guy kept pushing. He says, no means no. And that countries at different times aren't ready to do certain things. He talks about how during the Obama administration, when there was an uprising in Tehran, that the administration, the West, did not give any support to the uprising group. They ignored them. And had they given support to them, which they were looking for at that time, that group was looking for that, things might be a little different. He's talking about how President Trump at the time, when he had the ability to do certain things and take out, that he didn't do that, and they could have done that much earlier. Would that have saved Americans getting killed, et cetera, like that? And some the inside conversations that he puts in here are just unbelievable.
I don't hear that when these decisions are made not to help, and you think, okay, they're the president, they probably know more than we ever know. They know a lot of the backstory. But I never hear that backstory come up. Oh, this is why you didn't do it, because it would have triggered this, that, and the other.
This is the backstory.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
This is the backstory.
So these decisions, I have to say, and it doesn't go along any particular party.
No.
It's both. I just hope in the White House somewhere, in the Oval Office, there's some reason why they're not stepping up and helping the uprisings. Because all that's going to do, Arnold, is going to help that region to be more of a peaceful region, a prosperous region.
Absolutely.
And wow, why is it so bad to live in peace?
If you want to have the destruction of a country,
which is happening
as your motto,
which is happening, they're in rubbles,
right? And then this is what you get.
And then generations of people are upset and mad. And
what's interesting about this is this proxy war that's going on, that Iran is not dealing directly with Israel. They're dealing indirectly through subordinates. And who is suffering are not the direct Iranian people or the Iranian government, but people who they put in for proxies to do their dirty work for them.
Isn't that terrible? It's just terrible to me. At some point, you got to call a spade or whatever they say. It's just... yeah, it is what it is, and we need to step up and say,
yes,
you're right. It's a proxy war. It's pathetic. When does it? I guess I get very weary of it, and sometimes I say, let's just try a peaceful way. But it was someone attacking the United States like that, we would be relentless. We would. I don't believe we would stop.
Absolutely,
and we haven't.
And there's so many political decisions that go into these things, so many economic decisions that go into. If you do this, it's like a domino board. And when I talked about that 3D chess thing, I thought about Star Trek. I got enough trouble with a 2D chessboard, let alone thinking at three different levels and looking down and all of that. And that's exactly what I want to say. It's not even 3D; it's 4 or 5D. Yeah. There's so many players involved in this.
Right.
So many players.
And the destruction goes so deep, and it's going to go so long and so many generations.
Yes, yes.
And the rebuilding is going to cost.
And it's been going on for so long.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston of St. Louis in Tune. Don't go away. This is Arnold Stricker of St. Louis in Tune on behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a major legal event and catalyst that contributed to the Civil War. The decision declared that Dred Scott could not be free because he was not a citizen. The 14th Amendment also called the Dred Scott Amendment, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized here in our country and was intended to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 9, 1868. The Dred Scott Heritage Foundation is requesting a commemorative stamp to be issued from the U.S. Postal Service to recognize and remember the heritage of this amendment by issuing a stamp with the likeness of the man Dred Scott. But we need your support and the support of thousands of people who would like to see this happen. To achieve this goal, we ask you to download, sign, and share the one-page petition with others. To find the petition, please go to dredscottlives.org and click on the Dred Scott Petition Drive on the right side of the page. On behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation, this has been Arnold Stricker of St. Louis in Tune. The United States has a strong tradition of welcoming newcomers and refugees. The Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking freedom and safety and in turn help strengthen their own communities. Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what Americans represent to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. All it takes is a helping hand. Are you ready to learn more? Contact the International Institute of St. Louis at info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. That's info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. Welcome back to St. Louis in Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. Mark, there's a quote in the book that he mentions, and this was when...
And the book is titled...
The book is titled Target Tehran, How Israel is Using Sabotage, Cyberwarfare, Assassination, and Secret Diplomacy to Stop a Nuclear Iran and Create a New Middle East. It's by Johann Jeremy Bob and our guest, who we were listening to, Ilan Evyatar.
And I think, was he in Israel?
He was in Israel when we talked with him, yes. We do some tremendous things.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah.
So
he's right there in the middle of it all.
Oh, yeah.
This is someone that knows what's going on. This is not just somebody sitting in wherever.
Yes, and his background, which we talked about, he was a former editor-in-chief of award-winning magazine The Jerusalem Report. Mm-hmm. He's a former news director, columnist, and senior contributor at the Jerusalem Post.
Wow.
He's edited and translated several books, a speechwriter, ghostwriter. He's born in Israel, raised in London. You could tell by his accent. But he has the contacts. He's interviewed a boatload of intelligence officials and politicians, business and cultural personalities. In the book, they were talking about killing Soleimani, who was in charge in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah of attacking Americans and attacking Israel. And he's had this long history of hate towards the West and hate towards the United States and Israel. And this is during the Trump administration, and they were trying to decide who is going to do this. Is it going to be Israel that takes this guy out because they've had opportunities? Is it going to be the United States? They've had opportunities. And finally, that the CIA director at the time, who was Gina Haspel, was talking about now is the time to really do this. That she gave the decisive moment, and she said, the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of doing something. And Mike Esper, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, that's what he said. And then she also... There's also John Bolton, who was also national security advisor. He said, if you punt, you're not just punting for 24 hours. You could be punting for months. Right. In other words, if you pass this opportunity by, you may not get another opportunity for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And what could happen in that meantime? And these are decisions that we hear on the news, and we wonder, all of a sudden there's this attack happens, and people go, well, how could we do that? What could we don't know. We're not even scratching the surface of what's going on behind the scenes.
The backstory on it, yeah.
Yeah, the backstory is huge on this. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's going to be doing an online event at the Jewish Book Festival on Tuesday, November the 12th, is huge for the St. Louis Jewish Community Center and the Jewish Book Festival to get him on there to do that.
I know this is such a heavy subject, but there's so much of what he talks about that I had no clue about. I had no idea. I'm always like, give peace a chance.
Right.
And peace should happen. I hope it does. I can't wait till it does. But there are so many circumstances here, so many levels, like you said, that need to be dealt with in order for peace to even work, or even to get a foothold into it. So it is as heavy as it is. I think these are things that we need to be educated about so that we can understand it, so that maybe then our passions can come out and really help find the solutions.
And part of the reason we had him on the show, and part of the reason I love doing this show with you, is because we try to deal with facts. We try not to, I'm not going to take a side in this deal. Right. Here are the facts. And I wish he would write a book on the history of Israel, okay? Because when you look back on the history of Israel and you go back to when the UN granted them the territory to be there, and the situations that happened when Palestine wants to be recognized and they want to be normalized as a country, and people talk about the Palestinian flag. There really is no Palestine, okay? It's a group of people right now. It's not a country.
Right.
And how many times Israel has reached out to them, supported the Palestinian people, and the leaders of the people who got into power by hook or by crook have made decisions not in the best interest of the people, and they've made in the best interest of themselves. And Israel has offered things that's been turned down. That's why the rest of the Arab community, especially Saudi Arabia, I would say, was like, and Qatar and the Emirates were like, we want to have normalization of relations with Israel. But Hamas, you're screwing things up. Hezbollah, you're screwing things up.
Or Iran.
You're screwing things up. They don't want to, they're afraid of Iran. They really are. They're afraid of, because you've got in Saudi Arabia and a couple of these other countries, you still have a kingdom where it's not a government kind of thing. It's you got a king. And they don't want to lose that individual power.
Right.
And so they have to tread carefully about that, but also about the Arab brothers and not upsetting them. But they can't stand Iran. And that's why they like Israel, because Israel's not going to stand down from Iran.
No, not at all. It's amazing. Such a small little country.
Yes.
We're not going along with that. And Iran has allies that are Russia. But
Russia's they're concerned about with what's going on right now in Ukraine. They're divided right now.
Right.
They're stretched. Now they've incorporated with the North Koreans to provide weapons, the Chinese to help provide weapons and things like that. They're stretched right now. And I thought about that same thing, Mark, because Russia and Iran, you had a really tight relationship, but you haven't heard a lot about that
No,
recently.
you really haven't. And they've got to get help. They're not. Iran is just not. They have to have help. They can't do it on their own, I don't believe, at this point.
Something that really surprised me in the book that he wrote was Mossad saying they knew where all of the governmental officials were in Iran, and they could basically take them out at any time. Now, that is, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And which shows you how much they have infiltrated and how much contact they have with minority groups that are at odds with the regime over there, that those kind of groups are helping them do their work. And even probably those people of the regime who are like, I'm sick of this stuff. Yeah, I'll help you out. How do you walk into somebody's backyard at their house and steal their most valuable secrets and walk away and not get caught?
It's amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is amazing.
I really highly recommend the book, Target Tehran. If you are a history buff, this is a great book. Now, I would say this, he goes into a lot of detail. And he lists in the front and also in the back of the book, like, hey, here are the players. These are the people. What I would want to know is how many of these players are now dead? Because they've been like going by like flies. They've been falling like flies recently. So it's just wild.
It's
truly wild.
It's difficult. It's such a difficult. I still am hopeful that it can be peaceful over there, or workable anyway.
Sometime.
Where they can get along.
Sometime it might. And kudos to the Jewish people who just tolerate it. The Iron Dome.
Oh, I know.
That we hear about on the news, it's not that old. You know, there used to be that Israel would get bombed quite a bit from the missiles, and they developed the Iron Dome, and They also, the United States has their defense system that they've moved over there also. So
It's remarkable.
it's crazy. Why would you want to live over there? People would probably say, why do we want to live here?
Yeah.
There's reasons.
Yeah.
There's reasons. Which gets me to the word of the day.
Oh, no. Okay.
Defenestration.
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 I wonder what that could mean.
Now, it's a swift dismissal or expulsion as from a political party or office. It could be like a defenestration of a political leader. The mass defenestration of middle management, like Boeing is doing some layoffs, and the defenestration of middle management at Boeing was a shock. Or it could also mean this: in light of an oligarch who supposedly committed suicide by jumping out of a building again, another oligarch jumped out of a building again. A throwing of a person or thing out a window. In other words, assassination by defenestration.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to be a scholar to understand this. Okay.
Yeah, it goes with our book.
Oh, yeah, with the whole theme of the show.
Yes. Listeners, I really highly recommend Tuesday, November 12th, the St. Louis Jewish Book Festival. Ilan Evyatar is going to be talking more about Target Tehran. It's a 1 o'clock to 2:15 online event. You can get more information by going to the St. Louis Jewish Community Center, and we'll post more of this on the podcast page. So that's all for this hour, Mark.
Wow. That was quite an hour.
Yes.
I'm telling you, that was quite an hour.
And thank you for listening, folks. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can listen to additional shows at stlntune.com. Consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue to grow. I want to thank Bob Berthasell for our theme music, Ilan Evyatar, author and journalist, as being our guest, and co-host Mark Langston. And we thank you, folks, for being part of our community of curious minds. St. Louis in Tune is a production of Motif Media Group and the U.S. Radio Network. Remember to keep seeking, keep learning, walk worthy, and let your light shine. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.